What if the woman you trust most isn't who she seems? What if her loyalty, her affection, even her respect is just a performance when you're around? Too many men confuse words for truth and attention for love, and the cost is brutal. Wasted time, broken trust, and years you can't get back. The harsh reality is that character doesn't reveal itself in romantic gestures or sweet words. It reveals itself when no one's watching and when she doesn't need you anymore. And here's the secret. There are only two silent tests that cut through all the noise. Two hidden signals that expose who she really is beneath the surface. Once you learn them, you'll never mistake convenience for commitment again. Let's break down those two tests before you risk giving your heart to the wrong woman. As a psychologist and relationship coach, I've worked with countless men who gave years of their lives to women who looked perfect on the surface. But the truth came out when they least expected it. Don't let that be your story. Subscribe, like this video, and share your own experience in the comments. Have you ever trusted someone only to discover later it was just a performance? Because what I'm about to reveal will help you see past the act and recognize the real markers of character. Men don't get destroyed by obvious betrayal. They get softened by comfort. You've been trained to read love by the easy metrics. Sweet words, affectionate gestures, and how smooth everything feels when life isn't throwing punches. That's why smart men still miss the truth. You're measuring the weather, not the climate. You're grading performance in ideal conditions and assuming that equals character. It doesn't. Here's the psychological trap. In comfort, anyone can perform. Attention is cheap when there's no friction. Affection is abundant when there's no cost. Even accountability looks noble when nothing is at stake. Those signals seduce you because they confirm what you want to believe. She's warm, we vibe, we're good. But warmth and vibe are states, not standards. And states lie. Impression management turns a lot of adults into part-time actors. We all curate. We all polish. She might not even be malicious. She's human. When there's an audience, we all tighten up our behavior. When the audience leaves, our defaults return. That's why the real read is never what she does when the moment is lovely. It's what she repeats when the moment is neutral. Comfort hides, but silence reveals. If you keep evaluating her by compliments, cuddles, and curated weekends, you'll overvalue chemistry and undervalue character. Chemistry tells you how good the time is. Character tells you how safe the future is. The men who get blindsided confuse relief with reliability. Relief feels like, finally, someone who gets me. Reliability sounds boring in comparison. Patterns, principles, consistency. But that's what carries you when life tilts. So what should you actually look at? Not debates, not dramatic tests, not trap questions. Look for behavior in the spaces with no scoreboard, no likes, no eyes, no immediate prize. When there's nothing to gain and no one to impress, people default to who they are. That's why I'm going to give you two silent tests in a moment. Two places where her real baseline shows through without a speech, a selfie, or a performance. Before we go there, I need you to drop two habits that sabotage you. First, stop treating suspicion and discernment like the same thing. Suspicion is fear, looking for evidence. Discernment is wisdom, collecting data. You're not a detective, you're a witness. Second, stop arguing with words and start auditing patterns. Words are forecasts. Patterns are weather records. If her record contradicts her forecast, believe the record. Here's a reframe that will save you years. Character isn't a promise. It's a pattern under two conditions, no audience and no incentive. If she stays aligned when the spotlight is off and stays respectful when you're no longer a resource, you're not guessing anymore. You're seeing. I can already hear the pushback. Isn't this cold? Isn't love about trust? Yes, trust that has been earned by consistent evidence. I'm not asking you to police her. I'm asking you to protect you. You've paid for too many illusions with your piece. You don't need to test a good woman with games. You simply need to notice what's already true when no one is clapping and when nothing is owed. So the plan is simple. We'll anchor your attention on 2 quiet checkpoints and let reality do the talking. No drama, no traps, just clear lenses. If she's the real thing, these moments will confirm it and deepen your respect. If she isn't, they'll surface the mismatch early, before you invest the parts of your life you can't get back. Now let's move from theory to practice. The first silent test is where most men never look. How she handles freedom when no one is watching. That's where loyalty stops being an outfit and starts, or stops, being a code. When men hear the word freedom, most think it's a gift. But in relationships, freedom is the stage where masks fall. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some women confuse freedom with permission. They treat unmonitored moments like an open bar for attention. The problem isn't that she has space. The problem is what she does with it. See, loyalty isn't a necklace she wears to dinner or a caption she posts under your picture. Loyalty is either stitched into her character or stapled onto her image, and the difference shows when no one is watching. Out in public, it's easy to look committed, smiling, affectionate, maybe even bragging about you to her friends. That's performance. But when the door closes, does she still live by the same standard? Or does she crack the window just wide enough for validation to slip in from another man? Let me give you a story, because abstract ideas don't hit as hard as lived moments. James is 43, divorced, finally dipping back into dating after years on his own. Through mutual friends, he meets a woman who checks all the boxes on paper. Charming, affectionate, and vocal about how much she values him. In public, she beams when he's around. She holds his arm, laughs at his jokes, makes him feel like he's the center of her world. But James is observant. He notices subtle shifts whenever she's out with her girlfriends or traveling alone for work. Her phone gets tucked away faster. Conversations end abruptly if he walks into the room. Harmless? Maybe. But one night he sees a notification flash, just enough to read a line of a message from another man. Nothing explicit, nothing incriminating, just enough to make him question why it was hidden. When he casually asks about her weekend, she dodges, changes topics, and paints the picture of a perfect night out. That's when James realizes something critical. Her loyalty glows in the spotlight but flickers in the dark. Around him, she's polished. Away from him, there are cracks. She isn't betraying him outright, but she's entertaining little doors she wouldn't want him to see. And that's the point. True loyalty doesn't depend on whether you'll find out. It depends on whether she values the bond as sacred, even when it would be easy to bend the rules. Now let's zoom out. James's situation isn't rare. Most men never check the difference between public loyalty and private loyalty because they're too busy enjoying the show. They take the outfit at face value and never ask if there's a code beneath it. But here's the raw test. Does she act the same when the world isn't clapping? If she only performs loyalty when it benefits her image, that's not loyalty, it's branding. This doesn't mean you stalk, spy, or grill her with suspicion. That's insecurity, not wisdom. What it does mean is paying attention to her baseline. How does she handle freedom? Does she treat commitment as a cage she can escape when unsupervised, or as a principle she honors regardless of audience? One answer gives you stability, the other gives you chaos delayed. Men, you need to understand. Freedom doesn't create betrayal. It only exposes it. If betrayal is in her, freedom is the stage where it walks out. If integrity is in her, freedom becomes proof. It's that simple. Don't complicate it. Here's the positive takeaway. The kind of woman worth building with doesn't see commitment as chains. She sees it as alignment with her own values. Whether you're in the room or 1,000 miles away, her behavior matches her words. You don't have to second guess. You don't have to chase reassurance. Her consistency is the reassurance. James walked away, not in anger but in clarity. And that clarity saved him from years of confusion. You owe yourself the same standard. Observe her freedom, not with paranoia, but with open eyes. Because if she protects what's sacred when no one's watching, you've got something rare. If not, you've got a warning. Let's push deeper into the first test, because spotting freedom isn't just about catching slips. It's about understanding the difference between an outfit and a code. I call it loyalty on the outside versus loyalty on the inside. And if you don't learn to distinguish the two, you'll confuse performance for principle. Here's what I mean. Loyalty as an outfit is presentation. She puts it on when it's convenient, when friends are watching, when family is around, when you're close enough to notice. She shows the right moves, affectionate words, loyal signals, maybe even public declarations. It looks good, it feels good, but it's conditional. The moment there's no audience, the outfit comes off. Her behavior shifts because the purpose of the loyalty was never about you. It was about how she appeared. Now, loyalty as a code is different. A code is internal. It's not about performance. It's about principle. She doesn't wear loyalty. She lives it. She doesn't need someone clapping to keep her consistent. Her integrity isn't determined by circumstances. It's anchored in values. And that's what makes her rare. Because most people, men and women, don't operate from a code. They operate from context. They adjust their behavior to the room instead of holding the room to their standard. Think of it like this. An outfit comes off when the crowd leaves. A code stays on even in the dark. And that's why it matters for you. A man who trusts the outfit will always be surprised later. A man who waits for the code will be secure. Psychology has a name for this: impression management. It's the tendency to present the best version of ourselves when we know eyes are on us. That's not evil. It's human. But the problem is when impression management replaces authenticity. If her loyalty is an act designed to impress, it will always fade in private. If it's rooted in her values, it won't matter whether she's praised or unseen. She'll treat the bond as sacred because she is sacred, not because someone is grading her. So how do you, as a man, test this without falling into paranoia? You don't have to interrogate. You don't have to stalk. You simply observe consistency. Does she shift depending on who's watching? Does her tone change in front of friends versus when you're alone? Are her boundaries stable, whether you're in the room or not? Over time, consistency tells you everything words can't. Here's the kicker. A woman who lives by a code doesn't fear being caught. She's not performing. She's aligned. And when you find that kind of alignment, you stop wondering. You stop overanalyzing texts, scrolling for clues, or seeking reassurance. Her life reassures you. That's the kind of peace men rarely talk about, but deeply crave. Don't settle for the outfit. Outfits fade. Outfits can be borrowed. Outfits can be styled to impress. A code is permanent. A code is chosen. A code is proven by repetition, not by applause. And that's why I'll leave you with this line. Integrity is what you do when the door is closed. If she's solid there, she'll be solid anywhere. If she's not, no amount of public loyalty will protect you. There's a second silent test that most men completely overlook. It doesn't show up when you're her provider, her rock, her emotional anchor. It shows up the moment she realizes she doesn't need you anymore. That's when the mask either stays on because it's who she is, or it falls off because the role has been fulfilled. Here's why this test matters. Some women's kindness is tied to benefit. Their patience, their affection, even their respect is fueled by what they're receiving. As long as you're helping her, supporting her, filling gaps in her life, she treats you with warmth. But once she finds her footing, once she's stable financially, emotionally, or socially, the temperature changes. You're no longer essential. And how she handles that transition tells you everything. Let me show you with a story. Michael is 51. After years of being single, he starts dating a woman who, at first, seems deeply appreciative. She leans on him emotionally, calls him after work to decompress, looks to him for reassurance. She also benefits from his stability. He covers dinners, helps her navigate tough decisions, and becomes a steady presence in her life. Michael feels valued, maybe even needed, and that feels good. For a man his age, stepping back into dating, being needed feels like proof of purpose. But then things shift. As months go by, she lands a new job, reconnects with her social circle, and builds a stronger financial base. With her independence growing, Michael notices something. Her tone changes. She cancels plans more often. Conversations feel rushed. When he expresses a need or boundary, she sighs, acts inconvenienced, or even gets irritated. The same man who once felt like her anchor now feels like background noise. Michael doesn't explode. He pays attention. He realizes her respect was tied to her need. When she needed him, she was kind. When she didn't, she was careless. That realization hit harder than any breakup line because it showed him the truth. Her affection was conditional. It wasn't love, it was convenience. This is where most men struggle. They hold on, hoping the warmth returns, bargaining with themselves. Maybe she's just stressed, maybe I'm overthinking. But denial doesn't change patterns. What Michael learned, painfully but clearly, is that the way a woman treats you when she no longer needs you is the sharpest mirror of her soul. It strips away incentives, reveals priorities, and shows you whether she valued you or simply the role you played. Now, don't mistake this test as doom. There are women who pass it beautifully. They don't rewrite history just because their circumstances change. They don't turn cold because they've outgrown dependence. Instead, they stay consistent. They may not need you, but they still respect you. They still acknowledge what you've built together. They treat your presence as a choice, not as a burden. That's grace. That's character. And when you meet a woman like that, you've found someone who loves from value, not from necessity. So here's the warning and the wisdom. Watch the transition. Notice how she acts when the dependency is gone. If she discards kindness once she doesn't need your resources, you've just seen her truest form. If she maintains respect even in independence, you've just seen something rare. Don't confuse temporary gratitude with permanent character. Gratitude fades. Character doesn't. Men, you need to ask yourself, are you with someone who values your essence or your utility? The answer is in the silence after her needs are met. You don't have to test it artificially. Life will do it for you. Just be wise enough to notice when it happens. I'll leave you with this line. The way she treats you when you're no longer necessary. That's the sharpest mirror of her soul. Look into it, because that reflection tells you more about your future than any sweet word or romantic gesture ever could. Let's tie everything together. After watching how she handles freedom and how she treats you when she no longer needs you, there's a final layer of clarity, the difference between love and convenience. This is where most men get burned, not because they didn't see the signs, but because they misread them. Love, at its core, doesn't change when the benefits change. If a woman respects you, she respects you whether you're paying the bill or not. If she honors you whether you're the safety net or simply her partner. Love sustains itself when external incentives fade. It doesn't weaken when the perks disappear. That's what makes it love. Convenience, on the other hand, is transactional. It thrives when you're useful. It thrives when you're filling roles, provider, therapist, rescuer. But once those roles are no longer required, convenience dries up. The woman who loved you for convenience doesn't mistreat you out of cruelty. She simply has no use for the dynamic anymore. And that's what hurts most men, realizing they weren't loved for who they are, but for the benefits attached. Here's the good news. You can spot this difference without running experiments or playing games. Life naturally gives you tests. All you have to do is pay attention. When there's nothing to gain, does she still show respect? When you're not in a position to solve her problem, does she still treat you with warmth? When the spotlight isn't on, does her attitude toward you remain consistent? Those are the checkpoints. You don't need drama. You don't need suspicion. You just need observation. This is where discernment separates men who suffer endlessly from men who protect their peace. You don't have to panic when you see affection fade under convenience. You don't have to beg for love that was never real. You simply have to tell the truth. This wasn't love. It was a transaction. And then you step away with clarity, not confusion. Let me make this practical. Stop rewarding surface-level loyalty. Stop mistaking kindness in public for commitment in private. Stop assuming gratitude equals devotion. Gratitude is temporary. Values are permanent. If you want lasting respect, you need to align with someone who lives by values, not someone who chases benefits. Here's the punchline I want you to burn into your memory. Benefits can buy affection, but only values sustain respect. And respect is the oxygen of a relationship. Without it, the bond suffocates, no matter how much chemistry or history you share. So the real question isn't, does she love me now? The real question is, will she still honor me when there's nothing to gain? If the answer is yes, you've found a woman whose character is deeper than circumstance. If the answer is no, you've just saved yourself years of wasted time. Either way, you win, because clarity is a victory. When you strip away the noise, the selfies, the words, and the weekend highs, it all comes down to two silent tests. How she handles freedom when no one is watching, and how she treats you when she doesn't need you anymore. Those are the moments that reveal her true character, not the curated ones, not the rehearsed ones. Because think about it, anyone can act loyal when eyes are on them. Anyone can play affectionate when they're leaning on you. But real loyalty shows when there's no reward, no spotlight, no incentive. That's when you discover if you've been loved or leveraged, valued or used. This isn't about living in suspicion. It's about living with wisdom. Suspicion makes you paranoid. Wisdom makes you prepared. The difference is subtle but life-saving. A suspicious man chases shadows. A wise man simply observes patterns and adjusts his investment accordingly. And that's what you owe yourself. Investment in clarity, not in illusion. If you're with a woman who passes both tests, treat that as the rare gift it is. A woman who guards the bond even in silence, who honors you even in independence, that's not common. That's gold. Don't take it for granted. Because in a world of temporary performances, finding consistency is the prize. And if she fails these tests, don't waste your life negotiating with red flags. Don't plead with someone's character to change. Clarity is painful, but it's merciful. It frees you to stop paying for loyalty that was only staged and start building with someone who lives by values. Men, your peace depends on who you allow close. Protect it like your future depends on it, because it does. If this gave you clarity, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and drop a comment about what resonated most. Awareness is your shield. Wisdom is your weapon. Use both, and you'll never look at love the same way again. What makes one woman stay true while another destroys everything you've built? It's not random, and it's not fate. It's in the choices she makes every single day. One respects the bond, even when tempted. The other uses temptation as an excuse to betray. Most men can't tell the difference until the damage is already done. But you don't have to be blind. There are 7 signs that separate women who stay from women who stray. And once you know them, you'll finally see who's by your side and who's waiting to stab you in the back. Now, I'll show you the very first sign that exposes a woman's true nature, and it's not what most men expect. Number 1. Look at how she handles emotional responsibility. This is where the first cracks always show. A disloyal woman will rarely, if ever, admit her role in the problems inside the relationship. Every fight, every cold silence, every disappointment somehow becomes your fault. She points the finger at boredom, at routine, at your supposed lack of attention. And here's the painful truth. Many men accept it. They take on the weight of every flaw, thinking if they just try harder, if they just give more, things will get better. But that's the trap. A loyal woman experiences the same temptations, the same frustrations, but she has something the other never developed: self-control. She respects the bond enough to confront discomfort rather than escape it. She has the maturity to say, "This bothers me," instead of letting resentment rot in silence. The difference may sound subtle, but it's not. One woman shifts the blame, the other takes ownership. One destroys trust by refusing to face herself. The other builds respect by being honest. Imagine the pain of carrying a relationship on your shoulders while she walks free of responsibility. That invisible weight crushes a man's confidence. Over time, he stops trusting his own judgment because every argument ends with him apologizing for things he didn't even do. That erosion is deadly to a man's self-respect. If you want to know who you're truly dealing with, stop listening to excuses and start watching how she responds when she's called out. Does she deflect or does she reflect? Does she twist the narrative or does she own her part? Emotional responsibility isn't just a detail. It's the root system of loyalty. A woman who refuses to hold herself accountable is already halfway out the door. You just haven't seen it yet. Number 2. Pay attention to how she handles closeness when things get uncomfortable. A woman who is not loyal doesn't break away overnight. She withdraws little by little. She goes cold in conversations, avoids eye contact, disappears for hours with vague excuses. She laughs with friends but falls silent with you. You feel her body next to yours, but her mind has already walked away. That is not harmless distance. It's the slow suffocation of intimacy. And here's the worst part. Many men sense it, but choose to ignore it. They tell themselves she's just stressed, just busy, just tired. But deep down, they feel the chill. They feel the way she no longer leans in when she talks, the way she suddenly guards her phone, the way she avoids serious discussions. These are not random mood swings. They are signals of emotional escape. A loyal woman doesn't vanish when tension rises. She faces the uncomfortable truth, even if it stings. She sits down, looks you in the eye, and says, "Something feels off." She doesn't hide behind silence because she knows silence is poison. Her loyalty isn't about perfection, it's about courage. Courage to stay present even when the conversation cuts deep. Picture the man who ignores the red flags. He keeps waiting for her warmth to return, waiting for the affection that used to feel natural. But instead of honesty, he gets distance. That emotional abandonment is one of the most painful betrayals because you're still there, trying, while she's already halfway gone. So ask yourself this. When she feels unhappy, does she disappear into coldness, or does she bring it to the table? Does she pull away like a ghost, or does she lean in to work things out? That difference decides whether you're building trust or waiting for the inevitable collapse. Number 3. Watch the way she tests you. Every woman will test a man at some point. It's part of human insecurity. But the difference lies in her intention. A disloyal woman doesn't test to connect. She tests to manipulate. She thrives on emotional chaos. She throws out little traps, complimenting another man in front of you, comparing you to her ex, poking at your weaknesses just to see if you'll lose control. Then she sits back and watches your reaction like it's a game. If you explode, she loses respect. If you stay quiet and take it, she still loses respect. It's a rigged system. You can't win because the point isn't love, it's power. A loyal woman may test too, but her tests are rooted in vulnerability, not destruction. She might say, "Do you still find me attractive?" Or, "I miss how we used to spend time." Her goal is reassurance, not control. She challenges you to step closer, not to tear you down. That's the crucial difference most men miss. The danger of falling for manipulative tests is not just the momentary conflict. It's the erosion of your masculine identity. When you accept devaluation, when you tolerate constant comparisons, you unconsciously tell her it's acceptable to keep chipping away at you. Over time, you don't even recognize yourself. Think about it. A woman who truly respects you will challenge you to grow, but never in a way that humiliates you. A woman who plans to betray will provoke until you break, because breaking you is how she convinces herself she's still in control. The line is clear if you're willing to see it. Are her tests coming from insecurity or from manipulation? From a desire for closeness or a hunger for chaos? That answer will tell you exactly which path your relationship is heading down. Number 4. Listen carefully to the way she talks about her past. A disloyal woman rarely admits the full story. Her history is a patchwork of vague explanations and edited details. Ask her about an ex and she shrugs. It was complicated. Press for more and she dodges. That's in the past, it doesn't matter. But here's the truth. It always matters, because patterns repeat. If she never faced her mistakes, she's likely to carry them straight into the next chapter. And guess what? That next chapter could be you. A loyal woman doesn't need to paint a perfect picture. She owns her scars. She can tell you where she went wrong, what she learned, and how she's different now. Her honesty might sting, but it's real. She doesn't hide behind denial because she knows growth only comes from acknowledging the mess. That's why her past feels clear. You can see the progression from immaturity to maturity. That's a woman who has built character. Now imagine discovering too late that her friend was actually an old flame she never let go of. Or realizing every breakup in her history ended with the same vague excuse. That's not coincidence, that's a cycle. And men who ignore these red flags often wake up to the painful realization that they weren't chosen for love. They were just filling a familiar role in her repeated drama. When you pay attention, the signs are always there. A woman who hides, evades, or changes her story, depending on who's asking, is revealing more than she thinks. She's telling you she hasn't processed her past, she hasn't grown from it, and she hasn't left it behind. The question you must ask isn't just, what happened before me? It's, what did she learn from it? Because a woman who refuses to face her past doesn't rewrite her story. She simply relives it with a new character. And unless you're careful, that character could be you. Number 5. Watch how she treats flirting. For a disloyal woman, flirting isn't harmless fun. It's her social currency. She flirts at work, on social media, with strangers at the bar. It's how she feeds her ego. She thrives on the looks, the attention, the little rush of knowing she still has options. And here's the brutal truth. She doesn't stop when she's in a relationship. In fact, sometimes she doubles down, using her connection with you as proof of her desirability to other men. A loyal woman sees flirting differently. She knows that every glance, every playful comment, every innocent laugh at the wrong time carries weight. She values discretion because she respects the trust you've built. That doesn't mean she's invisible. It means she's intentional. She understands that too much energy aimed outward eventually cracks what's inside. Now picture this. You're standing right next to her, and she's giggling with another man, leaning in just a little too close. You feel that knot in your chest, the sting of humiliation. But when you bring it up, she says, "Relax, I'm just being friendly." That's not friendliness. That's devaluation disguised as charm, and if you ignore it, it becomes the new normal. Men often confuse charisma with loyalty. They think a woman who craves constant male attention is just social. But there's a razor-thin line between being social and being on the market. A woman who is truly loyal will never make her partner question where her loyalty lies. She knows the difference between confidence and carelessness. Flirting isn't always cheating, but it opens doors that should never be opened, and a woman who treats it as a lifestyle is always testing the market, even when she claims she's committed. The question you must ask isn't whether she's physically unfaithful yet. It's whether her behavior shows emotional loyalty. Because once respect slips, betrayal isn't far behind. Number 6. Pay attention to how she talks about freedom. A disloyal woman loves to wave the freedom flag, but not because she values independence. It's because she wants a shield to hide behind. She'll say things like, "I don't owe anyone an explanation," or "I'm free, I can do whatever I want." On the surface, it sounds confident. In reality, it's just a loophole. It's a way to justify disappearing for hours, chatting with other men online, posting provocative pictures, and then flipping the script when you ask about it. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're jealous, you're insecure, you're the one trying to control her. A loyal woman values freedom too, but she understands that real freedom comes with responsibility. She knows that being in a relationship doesn't mean being trapped. It means being committed. Her independence is steady, not reckless. She respects time, boundaries, and space because she recognizes that freedom without responsibility is just chaos dressed up as empowerment. Now imagine the emotional trap of being called controlling just because you asked for respect. You're not demanding ownership. You're drawing a boundary. But if she twists that into weakness, you start doubting yourself. You walk on eggshells, afraid to be labeled insecure, while she keeps pushing limits. That confusion destroys trust faster than any argument. True freedom builds connection. It says, "I choose to be with you, and I don't need to test the limits to prove it." Fake freedom tears it down. It hides shady behavior behind a mask of independence. And here's the key. A woman who truly respects herself won't need to remind you she's free. Her actions will show maturity, not manipulation. So when she talks about freedom, listen carefully. Is she using it as an excuse to avoid accountability? Or does she see freedom as a way to strengthen the bond? The answer will reveal whether she's building trust or quietly dismantling it while you're left defending yourself against accusations that were never yours to carry. Number 7. Watch how she handles conflict and even how she reacts to compliments. This is where the mask usually slips. A disloyal woman cannot stand the heat of emotional pressure. When tension rises, she doesn't step forward. She steps away. She shuts down, disappears, avoids the hard conversations. Sometimes she's physically present, but emotionally absent, cold, indifferent, numb. That silence isn't peace, it's punishment. It's how she escapes responsibility without ever saying the words. A loyal woman doesn't vanish when things get hard. She may not like conflict, but she respects it as part of real love. She'll argue, she'll cry, she'll say what hurts, but she stays. Because she knows leaving the table doesn't solve anything. It's in the storm where loyalty proves itself. Now let's add another layer, how she responds to compliments. A woman who is not loyal craves them like oxygen. Every like, every message, every stare across the room fuels her ego. She depends on male validation, the way a smoker depends on nicotine. If you don't praise her enough, she resents you. That hunger doesn't stop. It grows until she looks for it elsewhere. Contrast that with a loyal woman. Of course she appreciates compliments, but they don't define her. She doesn't need 100 strangers to tell her she's beautiful to believe in her worth. Her calm energy doesn't shift depending on who notices her. And because she doesn't need outside approval to feel secure, she doesn't put her partner in a constant state of doubt. Think of the damage when both conflict and validation become weapons. When she disappears during arguments and feeds off outside praise, a man slowly loses himself. He questions his role, his value, even his sanity. That erosion doesn't happen overnight. It happens through silence and hunger for attention. So pay attention to these two windows, conflict and compliments. They reveal more about her loyalty than 1,000 promises. If she runs from the storm and chases external validation, she's not building trust. She's breaking it, piece by piece. Now let's go beyond the differences and talk about your strategy as a man. Recognizing the signs is powerful, but knowledge without action is useless. Too many men see the red flags, feel the distance, and still choose silence. They convince themselves it will change, that she'll come back around, that love alone will fix it. But silence doesn't protect you. It weakens you. Every day you excuse manipulation or disrespect, you're teaching yourself to settle for less than you deserve. The first strategy is simple but hard. Set boundaries early and clearly. If she dodges responsibility, call it out. If she flirts for attention, don't laugh it off. Address it. Boundaries are not about control. They're about self-respect. A woman who truly values you will respect those lines. A woman who doesn't will fight them, twist them, or shame you for drawing them. That reaction tells you more than her words ever could. Second, focus on patterns, not promises. Anyone can promise loyalty, but behavior reveals the truth. Watch what she does when pressure rises, how she treats your presence, how she explains her past. Patterns are more honest than intentions. Third, stop carrying the relationship alone. If you're the only one working, the only one fighting for stability, you're not in a partnership. You're in captivity. And the longer you stay, the more you shrink. Freedom comes from admitting when you're the only one holding the weight. And finally, accept this truth. You cannot control loyalty. That choice is hers. What you can control is how quickly you recognize the warning signs and how firmly you protect your dignity. That's the difference between being drained for years and walking away with your self-respect intact. So don't just study these differences. Live by them. Use them as a compass. Because the man who protects his emotional space is the man who never has to beg for loyalty again. You've seen it clearly now. The differences between a woman who stays and a woman who strays aren't hidden in the shadows. They're in plain sight, written into how she handles responsibility, how she deals with distance, how she tests you, how she speaks about her past, how she flirts, how she defines freedom, and how she faces conflict. None of these are small details. They're the foundation on which loyalty or betrayal is built. The danger isn't that these signs don't exist. The danger is that most men refuse to see them until it's too late. They tell themselves it's just stress, or just a phase, or just part of love. But love without awareness is blind. And blindness in a relationship doesn't protect you. It traps you. Here's the truth. You can't stop a woman from making her choice. Loyalty can't be demanded. But what you can do is sharpen your vision, strengthen your boundaries, and refuse to carry a relationship that's built on excuses and manipulation. That's not control. It's self-respect. So I'll ask you directly, are you going to ignore what you've just learned, or are you going to use it as armor? The difference between years of wasted time and a future of strength starts with that choice. If this video opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with another man who needs to wake up before it's too late. Hit the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment with the words, "Now I see clearly." That way, I'll know you're part of the men who are no longer walking blind. And remember this, you may never control who a woman decides to be, but you can always control how you respond. That control, that calm, unshakable awareness is the real freedom of a man. Some relationships don't collapse. They erode you, slowly, quietly, and almost always with one of 6 types of women men are naturally drawn to without understanding why. Maybe she felt familiar. Maybe she felt exciting. Maybe she felt like someone you needed to save. But if you walked out feeling confused, drained, or unlike yourself, you're about to understand why. That's why today, I'm revealing the 6 types of women men must avoid, and the signs that expose them long before the chaos begins. This isn't about blaming women. It's about finally understanding the psychology behind the connections that derail your life. Stick with me. You're about to gain the clarity most men never get. You and I both know this. Men rarely fall for the wrong woman because they're foolish. They fall because something far deeper is at play. Patterns written into them long before they ever learned how to choose. Most men don't realize how much of their romantic life is shaped by early imprinting, the kind that makes familiarity feel like attraction. A certain tone of voice, a kind of softness, a hint of chaos, even a wounded innocence. These things can trigger memories they don't consciously remember, but still respond to. And when that feeling kicks in, logic fades fast. There's also the rush. The dopamine pull that comes when someone sparks excitement, desire, or emotional intensity. The brain loves stimulation, not stability. And that's why a man can meet a woman who feels electric and assume that feeling means destiny, when really it's just chemistry wearing a mask. Attraction becomes a fog. And inside that fog, the red flags aren't invisible. You just aren't looking for them, because part of you wants the high more than the truth. But here's the reality most men never hear. The women who drain you the most aren't evil. They simply have emotional patterns that pull you in and wear you out. Patterns you mistake for compatibility. Patterns you confuse with connection. You're not wrong for wanting to love. You're only untrained in recognizing what kind of woman you're letting close. I once coached a man who fell for a woman who lit up every room she entered. She was magnetic, exciting, impossible to ignore. And slowly, she became the storm he couldn't escape. When everything finally collapsed, he told me, "I wish someone had warned me earlier." That sentence sits with me to this day. Attraction is instinct. Selection is strategy. You can't control who pulls you in, but you can control who you allow into your life. Number 1, the chronic drama queen. The woman whose life is a constant whirlwind of chaos, intensity, and emotional fires she never stops fueling. She's bright, magnetic, and full of energy, the kind that makes you feel alive the moment she walks in. But behind that spark is a reality most men don't see until they're already trapped. She doesn't just live in drama, she needs it. It's the oxygen she breathes. Her world runs on what I call the chaos dopamine cycle. Every emotional spike gives her a rush, and every quiet moment feels like withdrawal. Stillness makes her anxious. Peace feels unfamiliar. So she stirs something, anything, to create the feeling she craves. That's why her relationships with friends, coworkers, and even family are always explosive. Not because she's unlucky, but because turmoil is her comfort zone. The signs are clearer than you think. First, everywhere she goes, conflict follows. It's always a fight with a best friend, a heated argument with a sibling, a feud at work, a misunderstanding with an ex. The details change, but the pattern never does. Second, the smallest inconvenience turns into a full-blown catastrophe. You're late 5 minutes? Suddenly she's spiraling. You didn't reply fast enough? she's convinced you're pulling away. Third, her presence slowly fills your life with negativity, gossip, tension, and emotional fatigue that drains your energy before you even realize it's happening. And you, unintentionally, become cast in one of two roles: the hero she expects you to be, or the villain she blames when the chaos has nowhere else to go. Either way, you're in the story she's writing, not the life you're choosing. When you date a woman who thrives on turmoil, you don't get a relationship, you get episodes. You get unpredictable highs followed by exhausting lows. And worst of all, you lose your peace without noticing you gave it away. A woman who thrives on chaos will eventually treat you as the source of her next episode. So pay attention to how she treats the world around her, because sooner or later, that same emotional storm will find its way to your front door. Number 2, the manipulative, nice girl. She is the kind of woman every man thinks he wants: soft-spoken, attentive, supportive, and impossibly sweet. She makes you feel chosen in a way that seems pure, harmless, safe. But what most men never realize until it's too late is that her sweetness isn't the danger. It's the camouflage. This woman doesn't control you with aggression. She controls you with tenderness. Instead of shouting, she whispers. Instead of demanding, she suggests. Instead of pushing, she gently nudges you into guilt, obligation, and self-doubt. The trap she sets is subtle, and that's why it works. She starts with what I call micro-love bombing, not the exaggerated, overwhelming kind you see from overt manipulators. No, her version is quieter, more refined. She studies what you need emotionally and mirrors it back to you in small but calculated doses. She builds the image of the perfect partner, the one who gets you, supports you, understands you. And just when you start to relax into that comfort, the conditioning begins. You'll hear phrases like, "I guess I just care too much," or "I never thought you'd treat me like this after everything I've done for you." They sound innocent, but they're not. They're emotional levers designed to make you question yourself and work harder to keep her comfortable. Her compliments shift too. They become backhanded, subtle jabs disguised as affection. "You look great today. I was starting to think you didn't care anymore." It sounds soft, but it lands sharp. And each time, your confidence erodes just a little more. In conflict, she always plays the fragile one, the misunderstood one, the one who only tried to love you. Her victimhood is strategic. It puts you into the role of comforter, and her into the role of the person you feel responsible for. Before long, you aren't loving her. You're managing her. And that is the point. A woman who uses kindness as a weapon will never love you, only manage you. The only way to see her clearly is to test consistency. Real kindness stays stable. It doesn't turn into pressure the moment you stop performing. Pay attention to whether her sweetness stands on its own, or whether it comes with strings you can't quite see but always feel tightening. Number 3, the serial social climber. She's elegant, polished, and effortlessly charming, the kind of woman who makes you feel important simply by giving you her attention. She knows how to laugh at the right moment, how to lean in when you speak, how to make you believe she sees something special in you. But her interest isn't in who you are. It's in what being with you allows her to access. This is the woman who treats relationships like stepping stones. She has an instinct for status, not just wealth, but influence, visibility, and opportunity. In her world, people aren't partners. They're ladders. It begins innocently. She asks about your work, your goals, your lifestyle. She compliments your drive, your ambition, the way you carry yourself. But soon, the pattern emerges. First, she becomes unusually curious about your connections. She wants to know who you know, how close you are, and what they do. She lights up when you mention someone successful. Second, her attention sharpens whenever she sees that your life contains access, exclusive events, influential circles, opportunities she can't create on her own. Third, her expectations don't match her effort.
She wants the luxury, the comfort, the elevated lifestyle, but contributes very little beyond presence and charm. The truth is, she's not building a relationship with you. She's positioning herself. She's aligning with your success because proximity to you elevates her image. And the moment you stop rising or stop opening doors, she starts drifting toward the next source of momentum. This kind of woman rarely leaves loudly. She just becomes slightly colder, slightly busier, slightly more distant, until she's already halfway into the life of another man who can offer her a higher rung to climb. If she loves the doors, you can open more than the man who opens them. Step back. The way to see her clearly is simple. Strip away the glamour. Take her somewhere low-key, quiet, ordinary. Remove the spotlight. If her enthusiasm drops when the status disappears, you have your answer. Genuine connection thrives in simplicity. Self-interest dies there.
Number 4, the perpetual victim. She isn't loud. She isn't chaotic. She isn't manipulative in obvious ways. In fact, she often appears gentle, wounded, and misunderstood, someone you feel naturally compelled to protect. And that's exactly why so many men fall into her orbit without realizing the emotional trap hidden beneath her softness. She is committed not to growth, but to her pain. Her identity is built around being wronged. By life, by exes, by friends, by fate. She is the center of an endless string of unfortunate events, all of which somehow happened to her, never because of her. And while her stories may be heartbreaking, there is always one constant. She is never responsible for anything. This pattern is more than bad luck. It's a psychological loop. Learned helplessness keeps her stuck in the same emotional place, repeating the same wounds with different people. Trauma bonding makes her cling to anyone who offers comfort, and seeking sympathy becomes her way of maintaining connection. Not through accountability, not through self-awareness, through pity. The signs reveal themselves slowly. First, every past relationship ended because the other person was cruel, selfish, unstable, or heartless. She has never once said, "I played a part in it." Second, every conflict in her life, from missed deadlines to broken friendships, is someone else's fault. There's always a reason, always a villain. Third, her life story is a loop of "you won't believe what happened to me again," delivered in a tone that keeps you oscillating between protecting her and worrying for her. At first, you feel noble stepping in to support her, but soon you become the emotional crutch she relies on, the person responsible for filling the void she refuses to confront. And when you can't fix everything for her, because no one can, you become the next source of disappointment, the next culprit in her ongoing narrative of pain. A woman invested in her pain cannot invest in a relationship, so watch how she responds to gentle feedback. A woman ready for growth will reflect. A woman rooted in victimhood will deflect. And that simple distinction tells you everything you need to know.
Number 5, the commitment phobe in disguise. She isn't avoidant in the obvious sense. She doesn't run from affection. In fact, she gives you just enough of it to keep you hooked. She'll hold your hand, stay up all night talking, melt into you when you pull her close, and for a moment, you feel chosen, wanted, even prioritized. But don't mistake that warmth for stability. What she really wants is the feeling of connection, not the responsibility that comes with sustaining it. Her emotional pattern is rooted in fear. Fear of being trapped, fear of losing her autonomy, fear of letting someone get close enough to see parts of her she can't control. So she crafts a rhythm that allows her to feel intimacy without ever surrendering to it. A rhythm that keeps you guessing. The signs are subtle at first. First, her behavior swings between intensity and distance. One day she's glued to you, texting nonstop, wanting to see you, making plans. The next day she drifts, suddenly overwhelmed, suddenly busy, suddenly needing space. Second, she avoids defining anything. Ask her what she wants and she'll say, "Let's just enjoy the moment," or "Why rush things?" It sounds relaxed, but it's actually evasive. Third, every story from her past involves relationships that were almost something, situationships that just didn't work out, or partners who were too much too soon. What she really loves is the chase, the excitement that comes before things get real. When you're slightly out of reach, she's fully engaged. The moment you show up with clarity and consistency, she pulls back. Not because you're wrong for her, but because seriousness activates her fear. And that's the part most men misunderstand. They try harder. They become the pursuer. They start proving themselves, fixing things, smoothing the dynamic. But the more you chase her, the safer she feels running. When her affection comes and goes, it's not your worth. It's her fear. So speak plainly. Call out the inconsistency. Set boundaries she can't blur. And most importantly, never chase a woman whose pattern requires you to shrink your needs just to keep her close.
Number 6. The overly controlling perfectionist. She appears put together, thoughtful, and deeply attentive. She remembers the little things, how you like your coffee, the exact way you fold your shirts, the tone you use when you're stressed. At first, this attention feels flattering. It feels like care. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, it shifts into something else. Correction, supervision, and control wrapped in soft language. Her sense of safety depends on order, on things being done the right way, her way. Underneath the polished exterior is a woman whose anxiety drives her to manage every detail she can touch. And when you enter her world, that impulse doesn't stop at her home, her schedule, or her routines. It extends to you. The early signs are easy to overlook. First, she begins micromanaging the smallest choices you make, how you dress, how you plan your day, even how you speak. It starts with suggestions but quickly turns into constant adjustments. Second, she disguises control as concern. You'll hear things like, "I just want what's best for you," or "I'm only saying this because I care." The words are gentle, but the expectation behind them is rigid. Third, the ratio of criticism to appreciation shifts. You find yourself hearing more about what you're doing wrong than what you're doing right. And no matter how hard you try, there's always something that could be improved. Over time, her standards, impossibly high, ever-changing, become the measure you're graded against. And what starts as helpfulness becomes suffocating. The more you adapt, the more she tightens her grip. Until eventually, you begin losing pieces of yourself just to maintain peace. The most dangerous part is that she truly believes she's helping. She doesn't see her control as control. She sees it as love, structure, and guidance. And if you ever push back, she interprets it as ingratitude or carelessness. Control dressed as care is still control. The only way to protect yourself is to set boundaries early, clearly, and firmly. If she respects them, there's hope. If she resists, argues, or reframes your limits as a personal attack, then you're not in a partnership. You're in a system she's trying to run.
You've seen 6 very different women, each with her own patterns, her own charms, her own shadows. On the surface, they seem unrelated. One thrives on chaos. One manipulates through sweetness. One hunts status. One clings to pain. One fears commitment. One controls through perfection. Different stories, different behaviors, different ways of drawing a man in and wearing him down. But beneath all those differences lies a single, unmistakable thread: emotional imbalance. Each of these women pulls you into a dynamic where you're not meeting in the middle. You're compensating, you're rescuing, you're fixing, you're proving, you're absorbing, you're shrinking. Instead of standing beside her as an equal, you end up becoming a character in the emotional script she's been living long before she met you. And that script forces you into one of 3 roles: the fixer, the rescuer, or the provider of emotional energy she can't generate on her own. It feels flattering at first, being needed, being wanted, being important, but slowly, inevitably, it drains you. because no relationship can stay healthy when one person becomes the fuel keeping the other person emotionally afloat. These patterns linger because they target a man's deepest instincts, the desire to protect, to save, to guide, to be the steady presence someone can count on. But those instincts can turn against you when they're triggered by the wrong woman, one who doesn't grow with you, but leans on you, one who doesn't share responsibility, but hands it to you, one who doesn't build partnership, but demands emotional labor disguised as love. You don't need to change these women. You don't need to diagnose them. You don't need to fix their past or rewrite their stories. You only need to recognize that not every woman who pulls you in is meant to walk with you. You don't need to change women. You need to choose wisely. Attraction is instinct. Selection is identity. And the moment you learn to evaluate patterns instead of chasing feelings, you shift from being a man who reacts to a man who leads his own life with clarity.
You've walked through 6 patterns that drain a man's strength, disrupt his peace, and erode his sense of self. And if there's one truth I want you to carry with you long after this video ends, it's this: loving someone isn't the hard part. Choosing someone who protects your peace, respects your boundaries, and matches your emotional maturity, that's where most men fall. Women aren't the enemy, not the dramatic ones, not the sweet manipulators, not the social climbers, not the wounded souls, not the avoidant flirters, not the perfectionists. None of them are villains. They simply carry emotional dynamics that may not align with the life you're trying to build. They aren't bad. They're just not right for a man who values stability, clarity, and reciprocity. And you deserve those things more than you realize. Because as a man, you are taught to endure, to tolerate, to push through discomfort and call it strength. But real strength isn't staying in situations that drain you. It's recognizing when a connection is costing you more than it gives back. It's knowing when to step away. Not from love itself, but from versions of love that require you to abandon your peace to keep the relationship alive. Every red flag you learn to recognize is a piece of your future you're protecting. Every boundary you set is a safeguard for the life you're trying to build. And every moment you choose clarity over chaos is a moment you reclaim control over your emotional world. So I'll leave you with a question, and I want you to answer it honestly in the comments. Which of these 6 patterns have you met in your own life, and what did it teach you about yourself? If this video helped you see relationships more clearly, subscribe to the channel. This space exists to help men navigate modern love with insight, confidence, and authority. Like the video if you want more men to avoid the mistakes you've already survived. Share it with someone who needs the wake-up call. And join the conversation below. Your experiences might be the message another man needs today. Walk forward with clarity. Choose with intention. And never trade your peace for temporary affection again. Think about this. How many men wasted years in relationships that were doomed from day one simply because they ignored the warning signs? They confused quick intimacy with love. They mistook attention for loyalty, and they never stopped to ask if they were truly different or just another name in a long list. That's how men get broken. That's how they lose confidence and self-respect. But you don't have to repeat their mistakes, because those signs are there, waiting to be recognized, and once you know them, you'll never waste your time again. I'm going to walk you through 7 signs that reveal how many men have been in her bed. And the first one is the most dangerous because it hides in plain sight. Number 1. Comfort with physical closeness. A woman who has walked through too many doors of intimacy rarely pauses before stepping into another. That hesitation, that delicate barrier of modesty, is usually a sign of genuine attraction and respect for the newness of a connection. When it's absent, when everything feels too fast, too easy, too familiar, that should make you stop and look closer. Think about it. Most women, when they truly value the man in front of them, approach closeness with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. It's not fear, it's the natural tension that gives intimacy its meaning. But a woman who has repeated the same scene again and again loses that spark. What used to feel unique now looks mechanical, almost rehearsed. She sits too close too soon. Her hand brushes your arm as if she's done it 100 times before. And her conversations about intimacy sound strangely technical, like she's describing a procedure rather than a personal moment. To an untrained man, this can look like confidence. He might even flatter himself, thinking, "She must be so comfortable with me already." But here's the truth. Trust doesn't bloom instantly. Real trust is built in layers, through patience, through gradual vulnerability. When a woman skips that process, it isn't accelerated romance, it's repetition. You're not experiencing something rare. You're watching a pattern she's already lived many times. This matters because that missing pause, the one that should make your heart beat louder, isn't just about shyness. It's about emotional weight. When a woman no longer carries that sense of novelty into closeness, she's telling you silently that intimacy has been stripped of its deeper meaning. What should be a sacred exchange has been downgraded to routine. Ask yourself, does she treat physical contact as a casual gesture, or does she let it build with genuine anticipation? If it feels transactional, if it feels like she's flipping through a well-worn script, then you're not the main character. You're just another scene in a long sequence. The danger is subtle, but real. Men who misread this sign often invest their hearts into someone who can never meet them with equal depth. They confuse quick access with strong connection. And when the novelty is gone for her, commitment will never arrive for you. So pay attention. The woman who rushes closeness is not showing maturity. She's showing history. And history, when ignored, has a way of repeating itself, this time at your expense. Number 2, emotional walls always up. You can touch her hand, you can kiss her lips, but you can't get past the invisible wall around her heart. A woman who has lived through too many short connections often learns to protect herself by separating physical closeness from emotional depth. To you, it may feel like a contradiction. She lets you in physically, but when you try to reach her soul, the door stays locked. This isn't random. It's the result of repetition. Moments where she gave too much, felt the sting of loss, and decided to never fully expose herself again. Over time, that defense becomes second nature. She'll smile, laugh, and even seem affectionate, but something in her energy feels withheld. You tell her a story about your fears, your ambitions, or your pain, and her response sounds polite but shallow. She nods, she listens, but she never gives back the same level of vulnerability. That imbalance drains a man. Because relationships grow when two people risk emotional exposure together. But when she has trained herself to avoid it, you become the only one carrying the weight of intimacy. In conflict, it becomes even clearer. Instead of working through problems, she'll dodge them. Maybe she changes the subject, cracks a joke, or walks away entirely. It looks like she's avoiding a fight, but the truth is harsher. She's avoiding connection. And here's the hidden danger. Her distance isn't about you. It's not because of something you did wrong. It's a habit carved from her past. Each unfinished relationship left behind a scar that now functions as armor. The more scars, the thicker the armor. By the time you meet her, she may be so practiced at emotional withdrawal that you never get a chance to see who she truly is. For a man seeking something real, this creates an exhausting imbalance. You invest emotional energy, you open up, you try to build trust, but her response never matches yours. The result is frustration, doubt, and eventually erosion of your own confidence. The lesson here is simple but critical. Don't ignore emotional distance just because physical closeness feels good. One without the other is a trap. If she's quick to touch but slow to reveal, you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance. And that performance will end the moment she decides to exit the stage. Pay attention to how she handles vulnerability. A woman who always keeps her emotional walls up is telling you, silently but clearly, intimacy for her is a place she knows by heart, not a truth she wants to share. Number 3, a disproportionate male social circle. Look closely at who surrounds her. A woman's social circle is never random. It reveals where she seeks her validation and where she invests her energy. When you see a woman with an unusually large number of active male friends, it's not just a social quirk. It's a window into her patterns. To the untrained man, this may look harmless. She just gets along better with guys, you tell yourself. But ask yourself this. Why does she avoid building deep, lasting friendships with other women? The ones who would demand emotional reciprocity, vulnerability, and accountability. Instead, she chooses the easier path, keeping men orbiting around her, each offering attention, each providing validation, each quietly competing for her focus. Her phone lights up constantly. Different names, different conversations, but the tone is consistent. Admiration, banter, subtle flirtation disguised as friendship. And when you ask about it, she'll tell you they're just friends. But the frequency, the intimacy, and the energy she gives those connections tell another story. For many of these men, friendship is only the cover. Some have been closer than they admit. Others are waiting for their chance. Here's what you need to understand. Constant male validation becomes a safety net. It reassures her, it props up her self-image, and it keeps her from ever feeling the sting of loneliness. If one relationship ends, she doesn't have to sit in the silence or face herself. She already has an army of men waiting to fill the gap. That's not security, that's dependency. The danger for you is obvious. In a relationship, exclusivity isn't just about avoiding betrayal, it's about focus. A woman who constantly leans on male attention divides her energy. She never gives you the full weight of her emotional commitment because part of her identity is tied to the crowd of admirers in the background. You're not her anchor. You're just the current priority. And here's the harsh truth. A man who accepts this dynamic is agreeing to uncertainty. He's choosing a life of questioning whether he's truly the priority or just another option. That insecurity will eat at you, no matter how strong you think you are. A balanced social life includes both men and women, but a life tilted heavily toward constant male companionship is not balance. It's a red flag. It tells you she's trained herself to survive on external approval, not on genuine connection. Remember this. The woman who surrounds herself with men isn't just friendly. She's built her identity around being desired. And when someone's worth depends on endless validation, no single relationship will ever be enough. Number 4. Closeness as currency. Not every gesture of affection is real. Some women, after enough experience, learn that closeness isn't just about attraction. It can be used as a bargaining chip. Over time, she discovers that physical affection can bend a man's decisions, soften his resistance, and even silence his questions. And once that lesson is learned, intimacy becomes less about connection and more about control. Picture this. The night before she asks for something significant, she's unusually sweet, affectionate, and attentive. It feels special, almost too perfect. But then you notice a pattern. The timing of her warmth is never random. It coincides with what she wants. And when she's displeased, the switch flips. She withdraws, goes cold, leaves you wondering what you did wrong, until you give in just to restore harmony. That's not love. That's negotiation. The psychology here is brutal. From a young age, women are aware of the power their presence carries. But repetition sharpens that awareness into a strategy. Instead of closeness being a gift, it becomes leverage. She knows that a man, especially one who craves peace and affection, will adjust his behavior to earn her warmth back. She can punish by withholding, reward by giving, and in doing so, she turns the entire relationship into a power game. This is dangerous because it confuses you. You start to question whether her affection is genuine or calculated. Every touch, every kiss, every intimate moment becomes suspicious in your mind. You can't fully relax because you're never sure if it's about desire or about control. That doubt erodes trust, and when trust dies, the relationship rots from within. Here's the hardest truth. Once intimacy is used as currency, the relationship has already shifted into imbalance. You're not her equal anymore. You're a subject in her economy of rewards and punishments. And in that economy, she always wins because she controls the one thing you deeply crave: closeness. For a man who values himself, this is a red line. Because no matter how attractive, no matter how tempting, a woman who weaponizes affection will never give you a love that is free and genuine. She's too invested in the game. Remember, real affection doesn't need a condition. When she uses closeness to get her way, you're not in a relationship, you're in a transaction. And the cost of staying in that deal is always higher than you realize. Number 5. Surgical reading of the male mind. Some women develop a skill so sharp it feels almost supernatural. They can read a man's emotions, detect his insecurities, and exploit his instincts with surgical precision. At first glance, it looks like empathy. She seems to understand you better than anyone ever has. She knows when to compliment you, when to appear vulnerable, and even when to pull away to make you chase harder. But don't mistake this for a rare connection. What you're witnessing is a craft, perfected through repetition. Think about how skills are built. You don't become fluent in a language by accident. You practice, fail, correct, and refine. The same is true here. Through countless experiences with men, she's learned which words melt defenses, which silences create tension, and which gestures trigger your protective instinct. To you, it feels natural. To her, it's strategy. Here's how it plays out. She notices your insecurities about your appearance, your career, or your past. At the exact moment you doubt yourself, she delivers the right compliment, not to truly uplift you, but to make you dependent on her approval. Later, when she needs something, that well-timed validation becomes the hook that pulls you into compliance. It's not love, it's conditioning. The brilliance of this tactic lies in how invisible it feels. A man wrapped in this dynamic doesn't see manipulation. He sees connection. He tells himself, "She just gets me." Meanwhile, she's running a playbook she's rehearsed on others. You're not the first to be disarmed by her timing, and you won't be the last. And here's the cruel twist. Even when you start to suspect the game, breaking free isn't easy. Why? Because she targets your ego. Every man wants to feel special, understood, and admired. When she delivers that in measured doses, you become hooked. It feels too good to walk away, even when you sense the strings attached. This level of manipulation is dangerous because it's sophisticated. It doesn't rely on open demands or obvious pressure. Instead, it blends tenderness with control so seamlessly that you doubt your own judgment. You convince yourself it's love, when in reality, it's leverage. The lesson is clear. If her ability to read you feels too perfect, if her timing is always flawless, stop and ask yourself whether this is connection or calculation. Because a woman who has mastered the male mind can keep you trapped in a shallow relationship far longer than you ever intended. And by the time you realize it, she's already moved on to her next performance. Number 6. No shame about the past. Pay close attention to how she talks about her history. For most women, the past carries weight. Even if they don't share every detail, there's usually a sense of reservation, a recognition that intimacy is meant to be private, selective, and significant. But a woman with a long trail of short connections often treats her past like a casual story. No hesitation, no filter, sometimes even pride. She might laugh as she recounts previous relationships, or casually describe intimate experiences as if she were talking about a weekend trip. She may even frame it as something positive. A learning experience, just having fun, or part of figuring myself out. To an untrained ear, this sounds like honesty, freedom, or openness. But underneath, it signals something else entirely. Intimacy has lost its exclusivity. Think about what that means for you. If she doesn't hold her past with a sense of gravity, then what makes her connection with you any different? If the previous chapters of her life were just casual episodes, how can you be sure your story with her will be treated as anything more? The man who ignores this sign risks investing his heart into someone who no longer views commitment as rare or sacred. And when you question her about it, notice her reaction. Instead of acknowledging the weight of the past, she might become defensive, flipping the script by calling you insecure or outdated. That response doesn't come from strength. It comes from deflection. It's a way of avoiding accountability while normalizing behavior that erodes long-term trust. Here's the psychology behind it. When repetition strips away the emotional meaning of intimacy, what's left is a narrative that redefines the past as harmless. By reframing it as experience, she shields herself from judgment, but she also reveals her value system. And values are what determine the future of a relationship. For a high-value man, this isn't about moralizing or shaming. It's about risk assessment. If she treats her past with indifference, then exclusivity in the present loses its power. You can't build a fortress of trust on a foundation that's already been weakened by casualness. Remember this. The way she handles her past isn't just a reflection of what happened. It's a blueprint of how she'll treat the bond you're trying to build. If she laughs at history, don't be surprised when she laughs at loyalty. Number 7. A short, repetitive relationship history. Patterns don't lie. When you look at someone's history, you're not just seeing what happened, you're seeing how they operate. And a woman with a trail of short, intense, and repetitive relationships is showing you more than just failed attempts at love. She's revealing a cycle that has become her norm. Here's how it usually looks. Things move fast. The connection feels electric at the beginning, almost overwhelming. Within days or weeks, it seems like she's all in. Constant communication, strong affection, future talk. You're swept up in the rush, believing you found something rare. But then, just as quickly as it started, it begins to unravel. The spark fades, the distance grows, and before you even process what's happening, she's gone. And often, she's already with someone new before the dust settles. This isn't coincidence, it's conditioning. Repeated cycles of short-term involvement train her to thrive on novelty rather than depth. The adrenaline of a new connection gives her the high she craves. But when the excitement levels out, when the relationship requires effort, patience, and true emotional investment, she checks out. It's not that she can't love, it's that she hasn't learned how to sustain it. For the man caught in this cycle, the damage is real. You're left wondering what you did wrong, questioning yourself, when in reality, the script was written long before you entered the scene. You were simply the next chapter in a book that doesn't have room for long stories. And unless she makes a conscious decision to break the cycle, nothing will change. Here's the deeper danger: when relationships overlap, when one ends and another begins almost instantly, she robs herself of the reflection needed to grow. No lessons learned, no real healing, just constant motion. And a life built on constant motion never settles into stability. The psychology here is clear. Without space to process pain or confront her own patterns, she repeats them. And if you ignore the evidence, you'll end up as another entry in a list of quick highs and abrupt exits. Ask yourself, are you willing to be a temporary thrill, or are you looking for something lasting? Because if her history is a string of brief flames, the odds are high that you'll be next. The bottom line is simple. Don't dismiss patterns as bad luck. They are warnings, and when a woman shows you a history of repetition, believe it. It's not your job to fix it. It's your job to protect yourself from becoming another predictable ending. Now you've seen them. 7 signs that speak louder than words. They're not just quirks or habits, they're patterns, etched into behavior by repetition, choices, and history. And if you know how to read them, you'll see the truth long before the mask slips. Understand this. These signs are not about judging women. Every person has a past and every person has a story. But for a man who values his time, his energy, and his future, the past is not irrelevant. It's predictive. It tells you what you can expect tomorrow. Ignore it, and you'll pay the price with your emotions, your peace, and sometimes even your dignity. So now the choice is in front of you. You can close your eyes, fall for the surface, and repeat the same cycle of disappointment. Or you can open them wide, recognize the red flags, and decide that you will no longer invest in relationships built on shallow ground. The difference between men who keep losing and men who rise above is not luck. It's awareness. Ask yourself, how many times have you ignored these warnings just because attraction pulled you in? How many times did you mistake intensity for commitment or routine for trust? If the answer is too many, then let this be the moment you draw the line. Because a high-value man doesn't beg for love. He doesn't chase illusions. He observes, he learns, and he chooses wisely. And when he does, he protects not just his heart, but his future. So here's what I want from you now. If these signs opened your eyes, write in the comments, "I see the signs now." That single sentence is your declaration that you refuse to stay blind. Share this with a man who needs to hear it, because silence only keeps him vulnerable. And if you're ready to keep sharpening your understanding of relationships, hit subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications. This journey is about reclaiming your power, and it starts the moment you stop ignoring the truth. Every man thinks he's safe until he finds out he wasn't. She told you what you wanted to hear. She played the role perfectly, and because you were blinded by attraction, you missed the truth that was staring you in the face. Loyalty isn't about what she says, it's about what she shows. Ignore that reality, and you'll join the long list of men who thought their situation was different. I don't want that for you. Stay with me, because I'm going to reveal 10 signs she'll never be a loyal woman. Miss even one, and you could lose years of your life to the wrong person. As a psychologist and relationship coach, I've spent years studying how women reveal their loyalty, or their lack of it, without even realizing. That's why I want you to subscribe right now, so you don't miss the insights that could save you years of wasted time. And I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been blindsided by a partner you thought was loyal? Share it in the comments, because your story could help another man wake up. Now, let's get into the first sign, the most overlooked behavior that tells you if she's truly loyal or if she's a ticking time bomb. Number 1, she dresses like she's advertising herself. Let me be clear. There's a difference between style and strategy. Not every woman who dresses attractively is unfaithful. Some do it for fashion, self-expression, or simply because it makes them feel good. But a woman who constantly steps out in outfits that scream for attention isn't expressing creativity. She's broadcasting availability. Short skirts, deep cleavage, clothes so tight you can see her breakfast. This isn't fashion, it's marketing. And who is she marketing to? Not you, my friend. You already bought the product. That display is for every other man with a wandering eye. Now, she'll tell you the classic line. I dress for myself. That's the biggest lie men fall for. Nobody spends hours on hair, makeup, squeezing into uncomfortable shoes that tear their feet apart just to feel pretty. It's about supply and demand. Every glance from a stranger is a dopamine hit, a small rush that says, I still have options. And if she constantly needs that validation, your attention will never be enough. Here's the brutal truth. A woman who cannot survive without being seen by dozens of men will eventually seek more than just looks. When one source of attention runs dry, she'll need backups. You'll find yourself competing not with another man, but with the entire audience she's trying to captivate. And let me tell you, that is a competition you will never win. A loyal woman doesn't need a spotlight. She doesn't dress to prove her worth to strangers. She already knows who she belongs to, and she shows it by reserving her presence for you, not for the crowd. Number 2, her social media has become a stage. Look closely at her online world. If her Instagram looks less like a photo album and more like an audition tape, you're not in a relationship. You're watching a performance. Bikini shots, gym selfies cropped just right, endless stories designed to provoke thirsty comments. This isn't about memories. It's about building an audience. And make no mistake, an audience is never loyal to one fan. You'll hear the excuses. I just like sharing my life. Or, it's for my fitness journey. Don't get fooled. When every post is designed to highlight her body, when every angle screams, look at me, the purpose isn't documentation, it's marketing, just like we talked about before. And what comes with marketing? Leads, prospects, options. Here's the cold equation. When a woman consistently puts herself on display for public approval, she's essentially running an open competition. Today, you might be the winner, but tomorrow, someone else will place a better bid. That's not insecurity talking. That's simple math. Exposure plus attention eventually equals temptation. And pay attention to how she interacts with her followers. Responding with heart emojis, playful comments, inside jokes with men you've never met. Those aren't harmless. That's fuel. She's keeping the engine running with dozens of invisible suitors lined up behind the curtain. A loyal woman doesn't need a digital fan club. She doesn't need to broadcast her body for validation. She invests her energy into the relationship, not into strangers' news feeds. If her phone looks like a stage, then you're not her partner. You're just her current subscriber. Number 3. Her wild past never really disappears. Men love to believe they're the exception. You meet a woman who used to be out every weekend, closing down clubs, living for the thrill, and she tells you, that was the old me. I've grown up now. And you want to believe her. You want to think you're the reason she settled down. But let me tell you something most men don't want to hear. The party girl never dies. She only hibernates. Behavior creates wiring. The brain doesn't just forget years of chasing adrenaline, attention, and novelty. That thrill becomes part of her programming. It's like carving grooves into stone. Once they're there, they don't disappear. You can paint over it with routine, marriage, even children. But the moment stress hits, the paint thins, and the old patterns bleed through. Watch carefully. When life gets boring, when responsibilities pile up, when routine sets in, what does she crave? Suddenly, she needs a girls' night. Suddenly, she's reconnecting with old party friends. Suddenly, she's talking about how she misses feeling young. That's not nostalgia. That's a relapse waiting to happen. Here's the truth most men ignore. You don't reform a thrill seeker with stability. You only delay the inevitable. And who represents the ultimate routine more than a long-term partner? You. which means eventually she'll look for that missing spark outside of you. A loyal woman doesn't need the chaos of her past to feel alive. But if her history is full of chasing excitement, understand this. It isn't history. It's a sleeping pattern waiting to wake up. And when it does, you'll realize she was never really finished with that life. She was just on intermission.
Number 4. She has more male friends than female friends. On the surface, it might look harmless. She says, "I just get along better with guys." And you nod, wanting to believe it. But deep down, you know something doesn't add up. Women understand women. If she can't maintain close female friendships, but somehow has a lineup of male companions, that's not coincidence, that's strategy. Here's the psychology. Men don't orbit around women for no reason. They're not there for long conversations about her favorite books. They're there because they're waiting for an opening. Every just friend is a potential replacement, a backup plan, an escape hatch she keeps warm in case things with you go cold. And she knows it, she enjoys it, she cultivates it. Notice the pattern. Her male friends comment on every photo, text her late at night, invite her places you're not included. That isn't friendship. That's a revolving door of suitors waiting for their turn. And by keeping those connections alive, she's essentially running what I call a loyalty prevention program. The truth is simple. Loyal women understand boundaries. They know that when you're in a committed relationship, most of those opposite-sex friendships fade away or transition into friendships you share as a couple. What they don't do is maintain a private roster of men cheering from the sidelines. If she has more male friends than female ones, you're not in a safe position. You're in a waiting room. And the men sitting around her aren't friends. They're candidates. Number 5. Every ex was the villain. Listen carefully to how she talks about her past relationships. If every single story ends the same way, he was abusive, he was a narcissist, he was the problem. You're not hearing her history, you're hearing her excuse for the future. Here's the psychology. Someone who refuses to take responsibility for failure never learns from it. And if she hasn't learned, she will repeat the same pattern. Only this time, you're the one cast in the role of the bad guy. It's already written into her script. When she cheats, when she disrespects you, when she moves on, it won't be her fault. It will be yours. She'll rewrite the story until you're the one who caused her pain, the one who didn't love her enough, the one who held her back. Sure, it's possible for someone to have 1 or 2 rough relationships. But when every ex is painted as a monster, the common denominator isn't the men, it's her. That's not bad luck. That's a refusal to face her own behavior. And here's what most men don't see. By rescuing a woman who always plays the victim, you're signing up to become her next villain. She doesn't need healing. She needs accountability. And if she hasn't taken it yet, she won't start with you. A loyal woman doesn't rewrite history to protect her ego. She owns her part, even when it hurts. But the eternal victim? She's already rehearsing the speech where you're the next name on her list of villains. Number 6. She craves drama and fears peace. A healthy relationship should feel calm, steady, even boring at times. But for some women, calm feels like death. They grew up in chaos, they got addicted to emotional roller coasters, and now their nervous system doesn't know how to survive without constant spikes of intensity. To them, peace isn't safety, it's emptiness. Watch her closely. When things are good between you two, does she suddenly pick fights over nothing? Does she create problems where none exist? Does she stir up tension just to feel alive? That's not passion. It's dysfunction. And for women wired this way, cheating isn't about your failures. It's about creating another high. Sneaking around, the danger of being caught, the thrill of the forbidden. This is all just fuel for their addiction to chaos. Here's the painful truth. The more stable you are, the more restless she becomes.
You can give her love, money, security, and commitment. But if she's addicted to drama, your very stability will suffocate her. She'll look outside the relationship, not because she needs something you lack, but because she needs intensity you can't and shouldn't provide. A loyal woman knows how to appreciate peace. She can enjoy a quiet Sunday, a simple evening, a week without fireworks. But the drama addict? She'll destroy peace every time, and when the usual fights aren't enough anymore, she'll escalate. Cheating isn't a betrayal in her mind. It's just the next episode in her never-ending show. Number 7. She doesn't respect small boundaries. Pay attention to the little things. A woman who brushes off your simplest requests is giving you a preview of how she'll handle the bigger ones. If she checks your phone but refuses to let you touch hers. If she flirts with other men, but flips out when you talk to women. If she makes rules for you that don't apply to her. That's not equality, that's entitlement. Boundaries are like muscles. If someone can't lift the light weights, they won't be able to handle the heavy ones. If she can't respect "don't text your ex," then don't expect her to respect "don't betray this relationship." It's the same principle, just a different level of resistance. Watch how she reacts when you set even the smallest boundary. Does she respect it? Does she test it? Does she mock it? Or worse, does she flip it back on you and accuse you of being controlling? That reaction tells you everything. Because a loyal woman doesn't fight boundaries. She understands they're the guardrails that keep a relationship safe. The mistake most men make is ignoring these early signs, thinking it's just a small issue. But those small issues are practice runs for faithfulness. A woman who dismisses them is already showing you that rules don't apply to her. Here's the truth. If she can't pass the small tests, she will fail the big one. And the price you'll pay isn't a minor inconvenience. It's your trust, your peace, and eventually your relationship. Number 8. She moves too fast in love. It feels flattering at first. She tells you she loves you after just a few weeks. She wants to move in right away. She acts like you've been together for years when you've barely started. Most men mistake this intensity for passion. They think, she must really see something special in me. But here's the truth. She doesn't love you. She loves the idea of being in love. This behavior isn't romance, it's instability. Women who attach instantly also detach instantly. They're not choosing you after careful thought. They're grabbing onto whoever is available. That's not loyalty. That's fear of being alone. And fear-driven attachment always comes with overlap. She doesn't leave one man until she has another lined up, which means while she's with you, she's already scanning for the next lily pad to jump to. Here's what most men miss. If she fell for you overnight, she'll fall for someone else just as quickly. You're not unique, you're interchangeable. You're not the exception, you're just the current host for her need to avoid solitude. A loyal woman takes her time. She builds slowly, with intention. She doesn't confuse infatuation with commitment. But the instant girlfriend? She's like a firework, blazing bright at the start, gone in seconds. And when that flame dies, she won't stay to rebuild. She'll already be moving on to her next spark. Number 9. She constantly compares you to other men. It starts small. She mentions her ex was taller. She points out her friend's husband makes more money. She jokes about how some actor has better abs. At first, you brush it off. It sounds harmless. But understand what's really happening. Those comments aren't observations, they're measurements. She's keeping a mental scorecard, and you're in a competition you never agreed to enter. Here's the psychology. When someone truly chooses you, the comparison ends. You're not perfect, but you're hers. That's loyalty. But a woman who constantly compares is shopping. She's evaluating. She's keeping her options open under the disguise of casual remarks. And today you might be winning, but the game never stops. Watch how this escalates. At first, it's subtle. Jake's girlfriend is so lucky he cooks for her. Then it becomes direct. Why can't you be more like that? And eventually, it turns into justification. Marcus appreciates me more than you do. What she doesn't tell you is that Marcus is already the man she's emotionally investing in. The danger here isn't just jealousy, it's erosion. Comparison eats away at gratitude. If she's always scanning the horizon for someone better, she will never fully value what's in front of her. A loyal woman doesn't treat her relationship like a marketplace. She doesn't weigh you against every man she meets. She chooses once and for all. But the comparison queen? She never stops choosing, and one day she'll choose herself right out of your life. Number 10. She keeps parts of her life hidden from you. There's a difference between privacy and secrecy. Privacy is normal. We all deserve our own space. But secrecy is deliberate. It's compartmentalization. And when a woman builds walls between you and entire sections of her life, you're not her partner. You're just a guest in one of her many worlds. Pay attention to the signs. Her phone is always face down, locked with codes you don't know. She has social media accounts you've never seen. She talks about friends you've never met. She disappears into work or girls' nights that somehow never include you. This isn't independence. It's insulation. She's constructing multiple versions of herself, and you only have access to the one she allows. Here's the reality. Loyal women are open books, not because they have to be, but because they have nothing to hide. If her phone dies, she can hand you hers without thinking. Her friends know you. Her online life includes you. Her storylines match up no matter who's listening. But the secret keeper lives a double life. And double lives always collapse, usually on top of the man who trusted her. She'll frame it as, I just need my privacy, but don't be fooled. Those compartments aren't about healthy space. They're about undisclosed activity. If she's separating her life into locked boxes, ask yourself why. Because the truth is, when loyalty exists, integration follows naturally. And when secrecy rules, betrayal is only a matter of time. You've just heard the 10 clearest signs that a woman will never be loyal. If you recognized more than one of them in the woman you're with, don't brush it off. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. Here's the part most men hate to face. You cannot transform disloyalty into loyalty. Love doesn't reform it. Commitment doesn't fix it. Sacrifice doesn't heal it. Trying to build loyalty in a woman who lacks it is like trying to build a house on quicksand. You can pour in all the effort and resources you want, but the foundation will always collapse beneath you. And this is where you have to turn the mirror on yourself. Because the real danger isn't just her behavior, it's your blindness. It's the way you saw the signs and ignored them. The way you painted red flags green because you wanted the fantasy more than the truth. That's the moment you stopped being a victim and became a volunteer. Loyalty isn't something you teach, bargain for, or earn. It's a core trait. Women who are loyal don't need to be convinced. They've always been loyal, and they don't know how to be anything else. The tragedy is that too many men waste years trying to rehabilitate women who never had that foundation to begin with. So here's the challenge. Stop trying to change what's unchangeable. Raise your standards. Walk away from poison, no matter how attractive the bottle looks. And understand that being alone is far less painful than being betrayed. If this video woke you up, then do something about it. Subscribe now so you never miss these truths that can save you years of heartbreak. Hit like if this spoke to you, and share it with a friend who might be ignoring the same signs. And drop a comment with your story, because your lesson might be the warning that saves another man's future. Your next move is in your hands. Choose wisely. She doesn't confess because you confront her. She confesses when you stop reacting. The truth doesn't leak under pressure. it leaks under calm. Every man who's ever begged for honesty made the same mistake. He thought intensity would bring clarity. It never does. The louder you ask, the quieter the truth becomes. But there's a method, a psychological rhythm, that makes a woman reveal more than she planned to. It's not about being harsh. It's about being unreadable. In the next few minutes, I'll show you how silence, awareness, and emotional control work together to expose what words can't hide. Because once she feels you've detached, her truth becomes her only way back in. Have you ever noticed how her version of events always sounds reasonable? Not exaggerated, not emotional, just reasonable enough to make you doubt your instincts. That's the art of perception control, the most subtle form of manipulation there is. See, women rarely lie to deceive. They lie to stabilize, to protect how you see them, to keep the emotional atmosphere safe, and to make sure they don't lose leverage. A woman's truth is always filtered through emotional safety. It's not about facts. It's about preservation. When she senses tension, when she feels your tone shift or your presence tighten, her brain doesn't say, "I'm about to lie." It says, "I need to protect the peace." That peace isn't about harmony. It's about control. She wants to manage your emotional reaction before you even realize you're reacting. Imagine this. You ask, "Where were you last night?" She looks you dead in the eye and says, "I was just with some friends, nothing serious." Soft voice, calm tone, perfect pacing. Every piece of that answer was designed, not to deceive, but to contain. Because the truth isn't about what happened. The truth is about what she wants you to feel. That's why her words sound so clean, so logical. They're built like armor. Every sentence, every gesture, every pause is calculated to keep you where she wants you, uncertain, but not suspicious. You'll sense something is off, but you won't know why. You'll feel a dissonance between what she said and what your gut knows. And that's the exact space she needs to maintain her control. Here's the real psychology behind it. When a woman feels emotionally cornered, she doesn't fight. She redirects. She rewrites the moment to make you question your perception instead of her honesty. It's an instinctive form of narrative protection, the same mechanism that allows her to soothe, manipulate, and survive simultaneously. So when you hear her answer and it sounds perfectly balanced, perfectly convenient, don't just listen, observe. Notice how her tone is too calm for the context. Notice how she smiles when she shouldn't. Notice how her eyes shift, not with guilt, but with calculation. She's not lying to you. She's managing your perception. And as long as she believes you're still operating in the dark, still trying to understand her instead of reading her, she'll keep doing it. Because it works. Because you make it easy. Because she knows you're focused on what she says, not why she's saying it. The illusion of honesty isn't built on lies. It's built on your blindness to emotional strategy. If you want the truth, you have to first change what she perceives you already know. Because the moment she thinks you're aware, the entire narrative starts to crack. Women don't tell the truth because you demand it. They tell it when they believe you already know. That's the quiet rule of feminine psychology. Honesty isn't a moral choice. It's a safety mechanism. When she senses you're naive, she edits reality. When she senses you're aware, she edits herself. You see, perception is leverage. The person who appears more conscious of the unspoken dynamic always holds control. Most men fail here. They show their confusion, they chase for clarification, they let their tone reveal uncertainty. Every question, every emotional reaction tells her exactly how much she can hide. But when your energy changes, when you stop chasing details and start observing patterns, the game shifts. She begins to feel it. Not because you said something clever, but because your silence, your posture, your focus all communicate one message. I see through this. Women are hypersensitive to perception. It's an evolutionary trait. Reading emotional cues was survival. So when you stop acting reactive, her brain can't predict your next move. That uncertainty unnerves her. She doesn't know what you've seen or what you've figured out. And that's when the walls start to crack. Try this once. When she gives an answer that doesn't sit right, don't confront it. Don't demand proof. Just pause. Let your eyes rest on her longer than she expects. Tilt your head slightly, as if you've connected something. Then say calmly, "You don't need to explain. I already see what's going on." That sentence alone rewires the conversation. You've just flipped the power dynamic without raising your voice. You've made her subconscious panic. Not out of guilt, but out of uncertainty. Because suddenly, she realizes she's not leading the narrative anymore. You are. The psychological term is anticipatory compliance. When someone believes another person holds hidden information, they unconsciously reveal more than intended to protect themselves. She'll start softening her tone, filling the silence with details you didn't ask for, even correcting herself mid-sentence. She's trying to close the gap between what she said and what she thinks you know. That's the invisible shift you need to master. You don't win the truth by confrontation. You win it by changing the environment in which deception feels unsafe. And here's the thing most men never understand. When a woman feels you already see her, she loses the emotional incentive to hide. Because the lie no longer gives her power, it exposes her weakness. So the next time you sense dishonesty, don't react. Don't seek confirmation. Just act like the man who already knows. Watch how quickly her story rearranges itself in real time. The moment she senses you already know, her lies start to collapse on their own. That's the quiet dominance of awareness. No aggression, no threats, just presence. But awareness means nothing if you don't know how to weaponize silence. Men talk to find answers. Women talk to hide them. That's not cynicism. It's behavioral psychology. When emotions run high, men look for logic. Women look for control. And words are their control mechanism. The more they speak, the more they can redirect attention, redefine tone, rebuild safety. That's why the man who learns to be silent becomes the most dangerous one in the room. Silence makes people confront their own truth. It's a mirror, and most can't handle their reflection. Here's what happens inside her mind when you stop talking. Cognitive dissonance. Her brain hates the emptiness. The stillness feels like exposure, as if your silence is stripping away her story. So she fills the gap. With words, with nervous laughter, with unnecessary explanations. That's when the cracks start showing. Imagine this moment. You ask her something once. Calm, steady, clear. Then you stop. No sighs, no frowns, no repeated questions. Just presence. The pause stretches longer than she expects. Seconds feel like minutes. She starts to feel your silence pressing against her skin. And then she speaks again. Softer, quicker, correcting herself. That's not conversation. That's confession. Most men ruin their leverage by breaking the silence first. They can't handle the discomfort. They think persistence equals strength. It doesn't. Persistence is loud insecurity. Power, in its purest form, is restraint. When you stay quiet, your silence becomes a pressure cooker. It amplifies everything she's trying to hide. The more she senses you're unbothered, the more she feels exposed. Because she can't read you. And that unknown is terrifying to someone who survives by reading emotion. Silence also signals something primal. Emotional detachment. It tells her you're not desperate for reassurance. You're not waiting for her validation. You're simply watching, evaluating, choosing what to believe. That's when she starts revealing the truth, not because you demanded it, but because your silence forced her to face it. And it's subtle. It's not about making her uncomfortable for sport. It's about letting her run out of scripts. Every manipulative narrative relies on dialogue, on your participation. Once you stop feeding it, it dies. Your silence breaks her performance. Your composure exposes her inconsistencies. Your calmness makes her panic. This is the paradox. You don't get honesty by chasing it. You get it by holding still long enough for it to surface. Because silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of a man who already knows. And when she starts talking too much, that's where the next truth hides, buried inside the overflow of her own words. She suddenly gives you a full timeline, even when you didn't ask. Where she went, who was there, what time she left, what she wore, every small detail delivered with perfect precision. It sounds honest, it sounds open, but it's not clarity, it's camouflage. That's the paradox of deception. Guilty people over-communicate, because when someone's telling the truth, they speak simply, they answer directly, they don't perform. But when someone is hiding something, they start building a cushion of words, a verbal fog dense enough to make you lose focus. Psychologically, this is called information flooding. It's an unconscious defense mechanism triggered by fear of exposure. When her brain senses threat, the possibility that you've noticed something, it scrambles to build narrative control. The logic is simple. The more context she gives, the less you'll notice the core inconsistency. And it works. On the untrained ear. That's why your role isn't to listen harder. It's to listen smarter. Here's how you do it. When she talks too much, stop tracking the details and start tracking the distance. How far her words are drifting from the question you asked. If her story doubles back, loops around, or adds random justification, she's not explaining. She's distracting. That's your red flag. You'll notice micro-tells too. Her tone will shift between calm and defensive. She'll smile too long, fill silence with, "You know what I mean," or overshare about things that don't matter. She's not opening up. She's buying time. Every unnecessary detail is an emotional bandage trying to cover a wound she doesn't want you to see. So, instead of confronting her mid-sentence, just nod. Let her finish the monologue. Then repeat her main point back to her, short, cold, stripped of fluff. "So you're saying you just went there, talked for a bit, and came home." You'll feel it, the tension drop in her voice, the hesitation that follows. Because your summary just killed her cushion. The truth has nowhere left to hide. Here's what most men miss. You're not in a conversation. You're in a narrative negotiation. The more she talks, the more information she leaks. But your power is in what you don't respond to. Every time you let her drown in her own words, you give her enough rope to hang the lie herself. So listen differently. Not to what she's saying, to what she's avoiding. If her answers get longer than your question, she's building a wall, not a bridge. Guilt always speaks in paragraphs. Honesty speaks in sentences. And if you can hear that difference, you're already holding the power she's trying to protect. But the real shift happens when you change the frame of the entire conversation. Most men beg for honesty. Leaders command clarity. That single difference changes everything. Because the moment you ask for honesty, you've already surrendered emotional power. You're admitting that your peace depends on her truth, and that gives her the upper hand. She now controls the tempo, the tone, and the tension. You've made her the gatekeeper of your calm. Think about it. When you say, "I just need to know the truth," you're not being strong. You're confessing attachment. You're saying, "My sense of self depends on your validation." And that's the perfect cue for her to tighten her control. But when you shift the frame, everything changes. You stop playing defense and start setting the emotional terms of engagement. Instead of needing the truth, you define the conversation around clarity. You're not begging, you're assessing. You're not reacting, you're observing. You're showing her, silently, that you have the emotional stability to move with or without her cooperation. Say it once, calmly. I don't need to argue. I just need clarity to move accordingly. That line lands harder than any accusation, because what she hears underneath isn't threat, it's detachment. It tells her, you no longer control how I feel. That's when the panic starts, because every manipulative dynamic thrives on your emotional dependence. When she realizes she's lost that anchor, she starts reaching. She re-explains, reframes, backtracks, desperate to regain narrative control. You'll notice it in her body language. The pause before she answers, the sudden softness in her tone, the searching eyes trying to gauge how much you know. You haven't raised your voice or changed your expression, but you've changed the entire ecosystem of communication. The psychological principle is called frame control. In any human interaction, the one who defines the frame defines the reality. And when you hold your frame, calm, clear, detached, her manipulative scripts start to fail. She can no longer pull you into her emotional rhythm. You're outside the game, watching it play out. That's why the most powerful men aren't the ones who argue well. They're the ones who refuse to participate in emotional tug-of-war. They don't chase truth. They make truth chase them. When you reach that level, you stop reacting to lies because they can't survive in your presence. You've removed the oxygen of emotional tension. And without that, manipulation suffocates. So remember this, clarity isn't something you get from her. It's something you create for yourself. Once she senses that, she realizes something deeper. She's not the one holding power anymore. And once you emotionally detach, she has nothing left to hold on to. The more you care, the less honest she becomes. Not because she's cruel, but because your emotions give her a mirror. And she's learned how to use it. Women read emotion like a second language. They feel the tension in your silence, the tremor in your voice, the hesitation behind your words. And once she senses that her truth affects your peace, she learns something dangerous. Your feelings are her leverage. This is where most men lose control. They confuse love with surrender. They think caring deeply means reacting quickly. But emotional exposure isn't connection. It's currency. And once she knows you'll trade peace for answers, she'll never stop testing how far she can push the exchange. Emotional detachment changes that completely. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop depending. You stop letting her emotional storms dictate your internal weather. You become the eye of the hurricane, calm, steady, unmoved, while everything around you spins. Here's what happens next. When you detach, her control mechanisms fail. She can't provoke you with silence. She can't guilt you with tears. She can't manipulate you with confusion. Because now, every emotional tool she's ever used lands flat against your composure. And that stillness terrifies her. Because a woman's emotional influence depends on reaction. When she loses that feedback loop, when her words no longer trigger you, she feels invisible. And invisibility to a woman means loss of power. So she does what every human does when they feel power slipping away. She reaches for truth. She starts explaining herself. She starts clarifying unasked questions. She confesses, not because she wants to, but because she's trying to re-establish connection through honesty. Her truth becomes her peace offering. It's not manipulation anymore, it's instinct. Because when your emotions no longer belong to her, she must rebuild trust the only way she can, by being real. That's why emotional detachment is the ultimate lie detector. It creates silence without saying a word. It makes dishonesty uncomfortable, transparency inevitable. It forces her to face herself, not through confrontation, but through your calm. Detachment is not coldness, it's awareness without attachment. You're not punishing her, you're protecting your peace. You're showing that your value doesn't rise or fall with her approval. And in that moment, something profound happens. She finally sees what you've known all along. When you stop needing the truth, she finally tells it. Because that's not manipulation. It's emotional awareness. It's the quiet mastery of a man who doesn't chase honesty because his presence demands it. You don't get the truth by chasing it. You get it by becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to. Because when you finally understand the psychology behind her words, the safety, the control, the emotional choreography, everything changes. You stop reacting to what she says and start observing what she protects. You stop being led by confusion and start leading through clarity. Let's take a moment to remember what you've learned here. You now understand why she bends the truth, not to deceive, but to maintain control. You've learned that awareness, not aggression, exposes the lie. You've mastered silence, the invisible mirror where truth reveals itself. You can now hear guilt inside over-explanation and calm inside sincerity. You've learned how to shift the entire frame, taking back control of your emotional narrative. And above all, you've seen that the highest form of power is detachment, because nothing exposes truth faster than indifference to it. That's the transformation. You move from the man who demands honesty to the man who commands it. You stop chasing reassurance and you start leading the dynamic. You stop reacting to emotional chaos and you begin to set the temperature of every room you walk into. That's the difference between being emotionally reactive and being emotionally sovereign. Between playing her game and mastering your own. So the next time you sense something off, don't panic, don't press, don't plead. Just breathe. Watch. Stay silent. Because she'll either tell you the truth or she'll expose it trying to hide it. You don't force the truth out of a woman. You evolve into the man she can't lie to. And if this message hit you, don't just watch, learn, subscribe, comment your story below, and share this with a man who still chases answers instead of control.